Death is the price of admission to reality, not the death of the body, though that too will come as surely as evening follows afternoon, but the death of the story you are trying so very hard to tell about yourself. The world you think you know is largely a performance staged by your mind, a theater of mirrors where you chase the reflection and mistake it for the moon. You call it my life, and you clutch it, defend it, and market it as if it were a product. Yet what you protect is precisely what keeps you from seeing. To live as you are meant to live, you must let the masquerade end. You must let the costume fall to the floor. You must die to what you are not. This is not a threat. It is a promise. It is not morbid at all. It is the most vibrant invitation in the universe, because only in dying to the false can you feel the wild, generous pulse of what is true. If you look carefully, you will notice that everything alive participates in this dance of disappearance and arising. The wave that crests must also break. The flower that opens must also wilt. The day that dawns must also dim. Nothing holds itself in place without becoming brittle. The breath itself is instruction. You cannot inhale without exhaling. You cannot receive without releasing. And you cannot truly live without the courage to die to the ideas, judgments, and anxieties by which you've been trying to secure yourself against the flowing mystery that you already are. Consider how you hold your name, your resume, your opinions, your wounds. Observe how you brace against the unknown as if the unknown were a cliff's edge. But what if the unknown is not a cliff? What if it is the sky? What if the very thing you fear, losing the familiar, opens into the boundlessness you secretly long for? The paradox is delicious. The more you cling to me, the more life slips through your clenched fingers. The more you reel, axe your grip, the more the river carries you, the more you belong to what you never left. So I say, die now. Die to the image of yourself as the doer, the controller, the one in charge of the cosmic machinery. Give up your private struggle to be permanent in a world that is joyfully, irreverently impermanent. When you do, you will discover a shocking lightness, as though you've been carrying an invisible sack of stones for years and suddenly you set it down. You will see that the theater of mirrors is not wrong, it's just theater. You are not the role, you are the stage upon which roles appear and disappear. And once you know yourself as the stage, vast, still, luminous, you can play any role without being trapped in it. This is the death that gives life. Let us then inquire into this art of dying before we die, not as an exercise in gloom, but as the most intimate celebration of being. Because to die to illusions is to wake up from a dream of separation. It is to find that what you took to be you and the world are the same dance seen from different angles, the wave and the ocean, the note and the symphony, the flame and the fire. You were taught to identify with a narrative that begins at birth and marches forward like a soldier, past achievements, future goals, trophies displayed on the mantle of the mind. But the narrative you call me is stitched together from memory and expectation. It is a story told in language, a sequence of thoughts that arrive in this moment and claim to point somewhere else. When you mistake the story for the storyteller, you suffer. You try to rewrite the past and control the future, tirelessly editing a script that isn't being filmed anywhere but in your own head. Dying to truly live begins with seeing through the presumed solidity of this script. Watch a thought arise. I am not enough. I must become someone important. I should not feel this way. Where does it come from? Where does it go? Does it ask your permission to appear? The mind is a marvelous improviser, and thoughts are its jazz. They come and they go in the same mysterious way waves form and dissolve. If you grasp one, it turns into a knot. If you let it pass, it plays itself out and returns to silence. Now consider the ego, which is simply the habit of taking the stream of thoughts personally. The ego is not a villain. It is a useful tool, a social mask that allows you to navigate the marketplace, sign your name, and remember the recipe for soup. But when the mask sticks to your skin, when you forget you're wearing it, you begin to suffocate. The mask whispers that you are separate, vulnerable, incomplete. It whispers that life is a negotiation for security and that control is salvation. And so you attempt to freeze the river, to fix what is inherently fluid. The result is tension, fear, and a low, constant hum of dissatisfaction. The dying I propose is the soft removal of this mask. How? First, by recognizing that you are not an isolated capsule sealed off from the world. You are an event, a happening, like a flame that requires oxygen, fuel, heat, and 1,000 unseen conditions to exist. You cannot draw a line around yourself and say, everything inside this line is me and everything outside is not me, without committing a delightful absurdity. Your lungs are the atmosphere indoors. Your bloodstream is the ocean's reincarnation. Your thoughts are echoes of language taught by others, shaped by culture, weather, food, and starlight. To be alive is to be in constant exchange. You are not in the universe. You are the universe expressing itself as this particular configuration, this momentary lyric in a cosmic song. Do you see then why death is life's intimate companion? Not merely biological death, but the continual dissolution of boundaries that never existed in the way we imagined. The self you defend is a temporary eddy in a vast current. To allow that eddy to relax is not to disappear. It is to open into the current and flow with it. This is not annihilation. It is communion. In fact, the sense of annihilation comes only to the one who insists on being separate. The river has no such fear. Imagine you are holding a handful of sand. Tighten your fist, and the sand slips away. Open your hand, and the sand rests easily in your palm. Dying to truly live is the opening of the hand. The world is not an enemy to be subdued. It is a dance partner to be felt. The more sensitive your awareness, the more you notice that life does not stand apart, waiting for your approval. It is already here, pouring itself into you with every heartbeat, every bird song, every small sorrow and vast astonishment. When you are no longer obsessed with being the captain of this ship, you discover you are the ocean that carries it. There is in this a tremendous humor. The seriousness with which we struggle to be someone collapses into laughter when we glimpse that we are everyone and no one. Laughter, I have often thought, is the sound the universe makes when it catches itself pretending to be a person. In that laughter, there is tenderness. You become less interested in what you can extract from life and more interested in the sheer magnificence of being conscious at all. The wind in the trees becomes a kind of scripture. The silence between notes becomes music. Even pain becomes a teacher, whispering that everything changes and that to hold on is to amplify suffering. To die, then, is to participate willingly in change. It is to feel how the present moment is always dissolving into itself, like a snowflake melting on the tongue of awareness. No two moments are the same. No self is ever the same self twice. The miracle is not that things are impermanent, but that impermanence creates this shimmering kaleidoscope called experience. If all were fixed, nothing could blossom. If nothing could blossom, love would have nowhere to go. Let the flower be temporary. That is how it perfumes the air. How does one practice this art of dying in the midst of ordinary life? Washing dishes, paying bills, having conversations that go sideways, feeling misunderstood, yearning for purpose. Begin with the breath. Not because it is mystical, but because it is obedient to the law we are studying. Breathe in, receive the gift. Breathe out, give it away. Each exhale is a small relinquishment, an intimate dying. If you pay attention, you will find that exhaling feels like trust. Inhalation gathers, exhalation releases. Practice noticing the pleasure of letting go. You will not run out of air by breathing out. You will not run out of love by giving it. Second, notice the space around things. In a room filled with furniture, the most important element is the space that allows the furniture to be where it is. In a conversation filled with words, the most important element is the silence that allows meaning to arise. Attend to the spaces in your day, the moments between tasks, the pause before you respond, the gap between one thought and the next. That gap is the doorway through which the false self quietly departs, and the living presence of reality slips in, like dawn through a curtain. Third, play with your roles. If you are a parent, a teacher, an entrepreneur, a student, wear the role as you would a costume at a festival. Enjoy it, embellish it, but do not confuse it for your skin. When the role is required, play it well. When it is not, set it down. This practice alone is liberating because it reveals that identity is flexible, not a prison. If a role fails, you have not failed. The role has outlived its scene. Bow, exit, and wait for the next cue. Fourth, meet discomfort as a messenger. The ego resists discomfort because it threatens the illusion of control. But discomfort often signals that an outdated idea is being sick. Head like a snake outgrowing its skin. When you feel the heat of shame, the tightness of fear, the heavy coat of grief, breathe and listen. Ask, not with words, but with your whole body. What wants to be released here? Sometimes it is an old belief, I must always be liked. Sometimes it is an old story, I am the victim, or I am the hero. Let it die. The relief you feel is the fresh wind of reality blowing through. Fifth, cultivate a daily ritual of surrender. It need not be grand. Sit for 10 minutes and feel yourself supported by a chair, by the floor, by the earth. Imagine all the muscles in your face resigning from their tiny wars. Imagine the heart untying its little knots. Whisper inwardly, I consent to not knowing. Then open your eyes and continue with your day, but carry that consent like a quiet bell. You will discover that life arranges itself more gracefully when you are not frantically rearranging it. Sixth, transform relationships by practicing compassionate transparency. When you notice the need to be right, to win, to defend your image, stop and die a little. Admit uncertainty. Say, I may be wrong, and feel how the clenched fist of identity softens. In that softening, intimacy appears. The other person no longer meets a wall, they meet a human being. Paradoxically, when you stop securing yourself through argument, your words gain weight because they are not trying to conquer. They are offered and released like birds allowed to fly. Seventh, bring this art into work. Many people treat work as a theater of survival, a place to prop the ego on stilts and parade it nervously as competence. Try instead to approach work as craft, an opportunity to participate in the larger pattern, shift from how do I defend myself to how do I serve what is needed here. This subtle dying to self-importance energizes action. It clarifies priorities. It loosens as the fear that turns colleagues into competitors and tasks into threats. In this space, creativity emerges because you are not using every ounce of energy to keep your story upright. Eighth, remember delight. The point of dying to the false is not to become grimly enlightened. It is to make room for wonder. Go outside and look at the sky as if you had never seen it, because you haven't. Not this sky, not on this day, with this exact temperature of light and this unrepeatable arrangement of clouds. Let a piece of music evaporate your boundaries. Taste a peach as if the universe had practiced for 13 billion years to become this very sweetness on your tongue. It has. Finally, trust the seasons. There will be times when letting go feels easy and times when it feels impossible. There will be winters of the soul when everything seems to be dying at once. Do not panic. Do not cement the snow. The thaw will come, not because you forced it, but because the same intelligence that turns a seed toward the sun turns your heart toward freedom. Your part is to keep the soil soft. The deepest shift is this. Discover yourself not as the character in the story, but as the vast, lucid field in which the story appears. Notice how sensations, thoughts, emotions, and perceptions arise within awareness. Awareness does not struggle to hold them. It does not improve or reject. It simply receives. When you recognize awareness as your home, a quiet revolution occurs. You still have preferences and plans, you still love and grieve, but the background of fear begins to dissolve. Why? Because awareness is not threatened by change. It is the open sky in which clouds come and go. The sky never loses anything by the movement of clouds. This recognition is not an achievement, it is a remembrance. It is remembering what you knew as a child when you stood in the garden and felt the wind and did not name it. Words came later, and with words, the clever conceit that you were a separate unit managing a hostile world. To die to that conceit is to be reborn into intimacy with everything. You find that compassion is not a moral requirement, it is the natural fragrance of unity. When the boundary softens, the suffering of others touches you, not as an abstract problem, but as your own hand caught in a door. You respond not out of duty, but because no one hesitates to free their own hand. Letting go of the ego does not mean becoming passive or bland. It means becoming available to what is actually happening and therefore able to act with clarity. Ego clings to identity like armor, but armor is heavy and life is agile. When armor drops, responsiveness appears. You can say yes or no without drama. You can move toward or away without the narrative of being righteous. You can forgive because you no longer need the past to justify the self. You can apologize because you no longer require the self to be spotless. This is freedom, not the freedom to get what you want, but the freedom to want what is aligned with the living whole. Spiritual freedom, then, is not a destination beyond the world. It is intimacy with the world, here and now. Sit quietly, and you will notice that each moment is complete before you touch it. You don't have to add meaning to make it meaningful. Meaning flowers by itself when grasping relaxes. In this flowering there is peace, and in this peace there is a bright courage. You can face illness, change, uncertainty, and even physical death with a curious tenderness, because you have already practiced the essential move. You have died to the illusion that you were ever separate from the vastness that takes you in. Let us end then, as we began, by breathing. Feel the inhale arrive as if from nowhere. Feel the exhale leave as if into everywhere. Rest your attention on the simple rhythm. With each out-breath, release one small defense, a plan, a worry, a grievance, a title. With each in-breath, receive what remains, the undivisible, dead presence of this moment. If thoughts try to bargain, smile at them as you would at birds squabbling on a wire. They will fly off when they have exhausted their interest in themselves. Now, let this be a meditation spoken in the hush of your own heart. I consent to change. I consent to not knowing. I consent to the life that lives itself through me. Feel how these words do not bind you. They loosen the knots. Feel how the body responds, a slight uncoiling, a little more room between the ribs, a light behind the eyes. Imagine your name floating like a leaf on clear water. Watch it turn in the current. Notice that the water is vast and the leaf is not a burden upon it. You are the water, you are the turning, you are the clear, still depth that holds everything without strain. When you rise from this listening, do not carry it as a task, carry it as a fragrance. Walk through your day as if the earth loved your footprints. Let endings end and beginnings begin without bargaining. When you forget, as you will, remember again. When you grasp, as you will, open again. Practice the little dyings. Play your roles with tenderness. And then, when the final curtain falls, you will not feel banished from life. You will feel embraced by what you always were, this immeasurable, radiant, playful emptiness that appears as everything and calls itself I for a while. Die to the false, and see how life enters you with the brilliance of 1,000 dawns. Die to the small story, and find yourself written everywhere, in streams and laughter, in tears and night skies, in the quiet between heartbeats, where the whole universe is humming your name. In that recognition may you be fearless, in that freedom may you be kind, and in that kindness may you know that you have never been separate, never been lost, and never been other than the life that cannot die.